Welcome, Deborah Crombie, to our virtual Fresh Fiction Book Club. So good to have you with us tonight.
Great to be here. I'm sorry I'm sniffy. This is that evening North Texas allergy coming on every night about this time.
I completely understand. I mean, because we're essentially neighbors. Living in Plano, You're in McKinney. I had it last week. It's the joys of our season right now, yes. Right?
Elm and pecan pollen.
And we have it to look forward to for the next several weeks. So It's like, oh, well. But Deborah, to get things started off easy, for those of our readers that are new to you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got started writing?
Well, I am obviously, if you can hear me, my nasally sniffy voice here, I am actually a native Richardsonite, which for those of you who aren't neighbors in this part of North Texas, that's north of Dallas, and but I've been an Anglophile just as long as I can remember, and I did actually live in both Scotland and England for a while, and decided that I really wanted to write British mysteries. And so in February, I celebrated the 30th anniversary of the publication of my first novel in the Superintendent Duncan Kincaid and now Inspector Gemma James series of British police procedurals.
And what was it that was so appealing to you of the British procedural mysteries being really from the North Texas area? I mean, did it come about when you went there to visit and you lived there for a while? I mean,
no, actually, I wasn't
right until you came back, right?
I was crazy about everything British before I ever went to England. I didn't go to England until I graduated from college, and I just had this really, really intense sense of homecoming. But I grew up on all the British Golden Age mysteries, Dorothy Sayers and Agatha Christie, and all those people, and loved P.D. James and Ruth Rendell, and just felt really at home with, and I like the structure of a more traditional mystery. So I don't classify mine as cozy, but they're not really hard-boiled either. They sort of fall in that nice middle range, I think.
And what was the inspiration behind everything? Because weren't you originally a biology major?
I was a biology major, which I actually took a forensics course after I graduated from college for, I audited, not for credit, because I was really interested in the science of forensics. So yeah, I suppose I did get some use out of my degree. Actually, my college is awarding me an honorary doctorate in May. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. My liberal arts education has come in handy.
But, well, I grew up in Sherman, so I'm very familiar with Austin College. Oh, fantastic university.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Well, you can see why I'm really thrilled about this. So I don't think I'll get to go by Dr. Crombie, but maybe I could.
Hey, sure.
But I wrote from the time I was a teenager. I actually started out writing poetry and short stories. Never really had any ambition to write a mystery, but as I said, I had lived in Scotland and I had lived in England with my Scottish ex-husband, and we had come back to the States, and I was just so homesick for the UK. And on a trip to Yorkshire, we were driving around in the Yorkshire moors north of Thirsk, which for those of you who are James Herriot fans, that is the Yorkshire market town where the real James Herriot lived and practiced. And we saw this Georgian house off a little B road in the wilds of Yorkshire, and it was had been converted to a timeshare. And I thought, wouldn't that make a great setting for a sort of updated British country house mystery? And so that was the germ of the idea for the very first book. No experience in trying to write a novel. I came home and I took every, how to write mysteries, how to write continuing education courses, and took a stab at it. And I did sell that first book within about 6 months of finishing it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. And how did it, I mean, gosh, for 30 years, I mean, how did it all really come to you? I mean, was it, I mean, you said that you had received the inspiration. So was it the story? Did you, like Sarah was saying earlier off camera, right? Of like every time she was walking down the street past a bush, it's like, oh, there could be a dead body over here, right? I mean, so was it the story and the murder that first hit you, or was it the characters?
It was the setting. It was absolutely the setting. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to write a British procedural, I need a detective. And I do have to say that Duncan was sort of just immediately there. I knew his name, I knew his background, and I just had this sense of what his voice was. And I don't mean his speaking voice, which and obviously is British and not nasally, but how he thought and how he approached things. And then I thought, and Duncan actually comes from a little market town in Cheshire, where I had lived not very far from there in Chester. And then I thought, well, and I had actually made him a superintendent. He's still, getting out on the street and investigating cases, which superintendents generally don't do. So that's a little bit of fictional stretching there. But at the time, I wanted a character who was a detective who was senior enough that he could be sent to other places outside of London to investigate cases. The Metropolitan Police doesn't really do that very much anymore because other counties have their own pretty distinct police forces. But that was, that was the idea at the time. And then I thought, well, he is going to need a colleague. And Gemma sort of grew out of that. I thought it would be interesting to have his partner be female and to be really different in background and personality. So Gemma comes from a more working class background in North London, and she at the time was a single mother of a 2-year-old. And I love the idea of writing a realistic female character who was trying to juggle things that a lot of us had to juggle in real life. And I put them together, and it got interesting. It's been interesting
is great. Well, and with that, I mean, with their relationship also spanning the entire series, how do you keep that aspect of it fresh?
Well, and I do have to say that the book timeline, time has not moved at the same rate as outside time. They sort of exist in their own little pocket universe. Every book is contemporary. I mean, every book happens in what is present day at the time I was writing it, but so you have to have a little bit of fictional flexibility there. But the characters' lives have only gone about 6 years now. Toby, Gemma's son, was 2, and he is almost 8 in the latest book. So that's kind of a marker. But it's been a really interesting and unexpected. I mean, I had no relationship or romantic plans for the characters when I started out with that first book. And so they have kind of surprised me with their journey. And I don't think it's too big a spoiler if you read the dust jackets on any of the recent books, but they are now 19 books later, married with a blended family and 3 kids in the family, and they are no longer professional partners. So Gemma is an inspector, and Duncan is still a superintendent who doesn't want to be promoted. But they do generally get to meddle in each other's cases.
And that's one of the things I always enjoy about long running series like this, right? Where you have, here is the new plot point with each book, here's the key storyline, but also where you have these threads that are linking everything together. So when you're working on the latest novel, I mean, how do you keep track of some of those details? Because like you said, I mean, it's only a span of a few years, but it's still over almost 20 books.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of detail, and
There's
you
a
know,
lot
as
of
readers, right,
detail.
we're pouring
Yeah.
over those details.
If I had started out correctly, I would have kept a Bible, which is what writers call it, where you write down in every book all the details, all the names of the characters and their physical descriptions and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't. So basically I have to go back through the books and check my facts on a regular basis. And I think I probably do miss things occasionally, but there's a lot of stuff that's gone on over 19 books. A lot of characters who have come in, the cast has expanded. It's hard now, to decide who gets to make an appearance in a book, because I can't get everybody that I like in every book.
And are you a pantser or a plotter?
Oh, I'm kind of half and half.
It always drives me crazy with you mystery writers. How can you not have it all planned out?
I like to know where a book is going, so I think I am more of a plotter. I don't think I've ever written a book where I didn't know who the murderer was, who done it, why done it, how done it. So I do plot, and I plot scene by scene, a couple of chapters ahead usually. I find if you do more than that, then it just, things change and shift and you just have to redo it. So I don't sit down and literally outline a book all the way through, but I do like to know where it's going. And I have a lot of friends who say they just start writing and they have no idea where the story's going, which I just think, oh my gosh, how do they do that?
Exactly. I mean, and especially with mysteries, right? Because you always have that who done it, why done it, like you were saying. I mean, that's so critical. And it's like, what, how can you just not know that already?
Well, a lot of my books have multiple storylines and some of them have multiple timelines. And I don't know how you would do that if you didn't at least have some idea where it was going.
How many edits do you usually find yourself having to go through with the book because of that you've got to go back and fill in certain things, or, oh, here's a red herring that I need to plant, or some other element that you had in your mind but didn't quite get captured on the page?
I'm a constant editor. I edit a scene when I finish it. I edit a chapter when I finish it, and usually going back and editing a couple of chapters at a time. I'm slow is stressed to me very often, partly because I do like to work things out ahead of time, and sometimes it just takes me a while to figure out what's going on and where I want to go with a book. So I'm slow and I'm pretty thorough, and then when I finish a book, I will do maybe a quick first draft edit, and then I send it off to my editor, and then I do a whole lot more editing. So 2, 3, it's kind of shifting. It's hard to say.
Well, and again, since you've written so many different books with this series, and like you said earlier, 30 years, how have you seen your style change over that time period, and also the industry for your books change?
Oh, interesting questions, both of them. I think my style is a little more spare than it was when I started out. And some of that I may be able to put down to my editor, who really likes to keep things moving fast and doesn't have a lot of patience with long descriptive passages. So I like to write them, and I usually, get a lot of red X's on those. So the industry, that's difficult. I mean, it's hard for me to have a perspective on that because I'm not starting out in the industry now and trying to get a book published. The big publishers, the big New York publishers have consolidated. So I think maybe it is harder to get off the ground with a big New York publisher. But people were saying that 30 years ago too. I was very lucky to have been picked up by Scribner. Whether or not that would happen now, I don't know. I think the smaller presses are doing a lot of interesting things. So, it's a crazy business.
And where are you coming with your inspiration for each news story? I mean, is it frequent trips back to the UK of, okay, get that, shot of the English and Scotland in there? Or is it just as you're wandering around downtown McKinney, it's like, oh, wait a second, here's an idea, or that's an interesting character.
Oh, kind of a combination of everything. I really have to say, I really had a struggle with this latest book because I just started the research in October, a trip to London in October of 2019, and I had planned to go back in the spring of 2020, and we all know what happened in the spring of 2020, and I just really, really struggled, and most of the places that I was writing about, I actually had been, but you don't have that on the street sensory cues and that sort of getting into a sense of place, and this is what you would see if you went here, and it was really, really tough. And then at some point with the book getting later and later, I just had to dig in and say, I'm going to write it. I spent so much time on Google Street View that when I was reading the finished draft of the book, and there were places where I had to say, have I actually been there, or have I just been on Google Street View? Because those that had been so wired in my brain by that time. And then I finally got to go back in October, this past October, and it was really strange to walk those streets that I had spent so much time on virtually. Mm-hmm. But so it does make a big difference to actually be there. Mm-hmm. But I watch all kinds of British television, and I'm always reading British novels and listening to audiobooks. And so there's always stuff filtering in.
Mm-hmm. And so do you struggle with that as keeping it inspiration versus, oh, here's another idea? Or how do you keep those things separate from your own work then?
Oh, I don't know. Books come together, for at least for me, for so many different directions. and you start with a main plot idea. Often for me it is setting, because I will have a place that I'm really interested in writing about, and I start from there and sort of go with, well, what sort of crime could happen here. And I always like to have a way to tie the case into what's going on with the series characters, and also like to have a lot of fun with some of the secondary characters in the series. So I think about how they could work into it. And so it just kind of feeds in bit by bit. I'm not sure that really answers your question.
Well, I love how it's also escapism for you too, because I picture you, and again, because I'm familiar with McKinney, right? And so it's like, I picture you there, but you're still putting together such realistic capturing of life in the UK. And like you said, and using the street views, it's like, okay, you see yourself there as everything is going on.
Yeah. Well, and I have spent a lot of time there. So I know what it feels like to be there and to be doing things there. And it's like having sort of a double life. It's always running in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, Deborah, I want to switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. These are a series of meant to be short, quick type questions with answers that kind of come to the top of your head, and hopefully nothing too hard.
These can be scary.
Right? But we don't mean to be, but yeah, because we cover a lot of different things. So what is your favorite writing fuel?
Tea. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon. So my William Morris pattern cup that came from the hardware store at Notting Hill Gate for £4.
That was one thing during the pandemic. It's like, I have plenty of tea, so I am set. Yes.
Yeah.
What is your favorite time of the day to write?
Late afternoon. I get that afternoon cup of tea, and then I have a hard time quitting to fix dinner. I wish I were that good in the mornings.
What is one luxury item or unnecessary thing that you just cannot live without?
Oh, that's hard. I don't know. Is British tea a luxury item?
I think it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
I mean, that's usually pretty necessary.
Yeah.
What is one thing that can instantly pull you out of a story, either while you're writing or watching or reading?
Oh. When I'm writing or when I'm
Either one.
Well, if I'm writing, it's trying to stay away from news and social media. I think I, need to go and write in an internet-proof chamber. I don't know. I tend to be not very easily distracted when I'm reading or watching things. It was great fun listening to everybody's icebreaker, by the way.
Well, let's ask you the icebreaker. I mean, what is the thing that when you do start thinking of British procedurals, what is that thing that instantly comes to you?
Oh, there's so many. Morse was a great example. Endeavor, Ian Rankin's books, P.D. James's books, Elizabeth George. There are so Vera, Shetland, those are all procedurals. I don't know if you would count the Ellie Griffiths, Ruth Galloway books, because even though Harry Nelson is the detective, but because, as somebody said, because she's not a detective and she's the main character in the series. But Ellie Griffiths, Harbender Core books, Postscript Murders, and oh shoot, Bleeding Heart Yard is the newest one that's just coming out here in the US. I ordered from the UK. But those are really good. Just lots and lots of
Lots
things.
and lots.
Yeah. Prime Suspect that Sarah said earlier, that was a great early Prime Suspect and Morse, and that really kind of started that genre on television, well, books and TV.
Well, sticking with the books, what is your most dog-eared copy or most reread book?
All the stickies in it, and obviously it's a British book with the W.H. Smith or Waterstone's mix and match. First book in the Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich, and they are paranormal police procedurals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But he has such a great sense of place, and which is why my copies are so dog-eared, because I'm always going back and checking things that places that he's written about for details, and I love the characters, and I absolutely adore the audiobooks. They're narrated by Cobna Holbrook Smith, who is an British actor, and they're just terrific.
When you listen to audiobooks, do you listen to them at regular speed or do you speed them up? It's a big debate.
I had never occurred to me to speed them up.
Oh, yeah. Most of the tools, you've got to find that right balance sometimes if you do speed it up.
No,
so that you're not in the chipmunk range. And we have some readers that they're just aghast whenever you bring up that you want to speed it up or alter the speed, because it doesn't capture their narrator's proper inflection. Like I said, it's a big debate.
And I really like to listen to British voices. I mean, not every audiobook I listen to is British, but a lot of them are. And I want to hear those voices. I don't, and I'm not usually trying to hurry through things. So.
Which accent do you prefer, British or Scottish?
Oh, that's hard. My narrator, Gerard Doyle, who reads earlier books as Michael Deahey, but is the same person. He does a fabulous Scottish accent. I don't know. I like them both.
What do you own a ridiculous amount of?
Books.
Join the club on that one, right?
Too many books, too many dishes.
Okay, you've been kidnapped. 2 hours later, you are returned because you can't stop talking about what?
Books. Food. Gin.
Well, Deborah, what are you watching, reading, and listening to right now?
I just finished an arc by Lisa Black called, for some reason, I'm really struggling with the title of this book, What Harms You, I think. Lisa's a forensic scientist, and this is the second book in a new series of hers where the main character, who's named Ellie Carr, is a forensic scientist, and it was really good. So, and especially if anybody likes that accurate scientific detail, I would highly recommend it. Before that, I read the arc of my friend and blog sister, Jungle Red blog sister, Reese Bowen's new standalone book, which is called The Paris Assignment, World War II historical novel, which was really good. So, and I don't know what is next. I have to look at my stack.
Depends on what mood strikes you, right?
Yeah. Watching, we just finished a documentary on Hulu called McCartney 123. It's Paul McCartney with the record producer Rick Rubin, and they are sort of working through the master tapes. And it was just fascinating. There's 6 episodes and we loved it. And tonight, Ted Lasso. Yeah, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. We could add that to the I would be returned if I was kidnapped after 2 hours, because I talk nonstop about Ted Lasso.
Understandable, yes.
And listening to Daisy Jones and the Six, which is really fun, because if anybody's watched it, the TV series, which has much more sort of omniscient viewpoint and narrative viewpoint, because the book is really interesting because it is all done in dialogue and back and forth between the different characters. So and some of my favorite audio narrators are featured, so it's really interesting.
Well, Deborah, before we head over to our unrecorded happy hour Q&A, what is the best way for our fresh fiction readers to stay in touch and see what's coming next from you?
Oh, great. My website, which is www.deborahcrombie.com. I am on Facebook as author Deborah Crombie. I'm on Instagram, and I'm actually on Twitter, but I don't use it very much. And the Jungle Red Writers blog. I am one of 7 female crime writers who make up Jungle Red Writers. And so we blog every single day, and we have a lot of guest authors and talk about fun stuff. And we also talk about what we're doing. So we have a What We're Writing week, where we each get a day to talk about where we are in the current project. So and that's www.jungleredwriters.com, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. So
yeah, it's a great site, because I remember you telling me about that years ago when you came to our Boas and Terrors event that we had. So yes.
Been doing it for 12 years in January.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a big commitment, but it's really fun. And makes a great sort of support group community. I think probably a lot like Fresh Fiction is. So.
Oh, fantastic. So everybody definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And Deborah, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight and spending some time with us. And we'll head over to the happy hour with our readers then.
Thanks so much for a great interview, Samantha. That was really fun.